Part 185. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1841. Man Base Hen said mysteriously, "Then do you know about General Fakao Zhonglang and Captain Mojin in Cao's army?" Chang Yu couldn't help but lower her voice even though she was exaggerating, and asked in a low voice, "Is this an official position?" "It's the first time I've heard of it." Man Bao nodded and whispered, "Do you know what they do?" Chang Yu shook his head blankly, and Mingda looked over curiously. "They are the ones who dig people's graves and steal the burial objects from them," Man Bao said. "In troubled times, even the army is like this, not to mention the thieves in the rivers and lakes. It's good that you don't have burial objects. Many things will definitely be the first to be targeted." Chang Yu was horrified and couldn't help shouting loudly, "I see who would dare, and this palace will definitely have a mausoleum guard." Man Bao asked, "Then do you see how many tombs of the previous royal family had guards?" Chang Yu was stunned for a moment, and Mingda said, "It seems that there are only 2 mausoleums that are still guarded." Man Bao nodded, "It's still someone sent by the court. If one day the court doesn't want to send someone, then there really won't be even a mausoleum guard." Chang Yu said dumbly, "My great Jin will be forever." Even Bai Shan couldn't help but say, "This is a beautiful wish, we can work hard for it, but it is harder than reaching the sky to make it a reality." Man Bao nodded. "In the future, people can ascend to the sky, but there is still no dynasty that can last forever. Isn't it more difficult than ascending to the sky?" Bai Erlang said, "It is meaningless to discuss such unrealistic things. You might as well think about something that can be achieved. For example, the 3 of us have already thought about it. After we die, we will bring a few handbooks written by ourselves. The area around the tomb will be fine." Man Bao and Bai Shan nodded again, and said, "Most of the tomb diggers are for gold, silver, jewelry, and porcelain. We can bring some things that we wrote by ourselves. It doesn't cost money and doesn't take up space. Going to the underworld can also be a memorial. I also want to bring my own daily necessities, all kinds of favorite ornaments, jewelry, and change of clothes." She swallowed, still not quite able to accept their assumptions, and whispered, "I don't think I should." Man Bao felt a little regretful in his heart, because obviously the book of strange records she read in the encyclopedia could not be shown to them. When she was young, Bai Erlang and Bai Shan liked to read strange novels. Basically, they all had to buy a copy of the newly added strange novels in Lujiang County bookstore. Man Bao rubbed and read several books, but unfortunately there are few new books in Lujiang County, and sometimes a new book may not be added in half a year, so she looked for it from the encyclopedia. At that time, Keek recommended to her a bizarre record that was more in line with their world. It specifically recorded the bizarre encounters of Jianghu people's tomb robbing, very terrifying. The 3 of them watched it with relish. After reading the discussion, they didn't want their tomb to be dug up in the future, so they all thought that they would never give valuables with them after they died. "By the way, what about that book?" Man Bao recalled carefully and looked at Bai Erlang. Bai Erlang immediately lowered his head. Bai Shan also glanced at Bai Erlang and said nothing. Yin Or saw it in his eyes. After leaving the East Palace and returning to Chongguan Pavilion, he couldn't help avoiding Lu Huan and asked the 3, "Have you ever met a tomb robber?" The 3 shook their heads together. "I haven't met it yet, how can we see so much?" Yin Or looked at them suspiciously. "Then why are you fighting a lawsuit?" The 3 did not speak. Yin He then said quietly, "I see, you must have something about tomb robbing in your hands, is it very confidential? Can't you tell me?" Bai Erlang had a lot of things he wanted to say, but he didn't dare, so he quietly went to see Bai Shan and Zhou Man. Bai Shan and Zhou Man hesitated for a while, looked at each other before nodding slightly. Bai Erlang grabbed Yin He and said, "I tell you, there is a lot of knowledge in this tomb robbery, we read a book of Yizi. There are a lot of small stories recorded on the record, saying that people from two sects specialize in robbing tombs and have grudges against each other. Bai Erlang recounted the story with great interest, but he was still a little unfinished, mainly talking about their love and hatred. Yin Or was very interested in the ghosts they encountered after they went to the tomb, and asked, "Where did you get such a book?" "It's been too long, Bai Erlang almost can't remember," he scratched his head and said, "Such a strange book should be bought by Man Bao. Bai Shandao, when we were in Lujiang County, we bought not only the bookstore, but also many old books outside. Sometimes we come across some very strange and beautiful books. They really like to buy and exchange books in the bookstore in Lujiang County." Bai Erlang didn't think there was anything wrong and nodded. Yin Yu asked, "Can you lend it to me?" Man Bao and Bai Shan turned to look at Bai Erlang together. "Is the book with you?" Man Bao said, "I just remembered, I did lose several books. Did you take them all?" Bai Erlang complained, "I only took 2 books, and I didn't take the rest. Don't forget, Mr. has also confiscated several books." After speaking, he said unconvinced, "I also have a lot of things with you, so what pictures, aren't you the ones who received them? I saw them in your room last time. Also, why do you only say I don't say Bai Shan?" Bai Erlang said, "He hides your books the most." Bai Shan, "Nonsense, I'm borrowing it, not hiding it." "Then you still do." The 3 grew up together, and they all took each other's books and things, and these things were not clear at all. Yin Or saw that the 3 of them were about to quarrel, so he hurriedly stopped him and brought the topic back. "Where is the book?" "Of course it's at home. How could such a book be brought into the palace? Also, it's a bit outrageous to mention such a thing, let alone reading a book." But Yin Or was still very interested. "Wait for Xiu Mu, I'll go home with you to get it." The 3 nodded together, responded, and warned, "Don't tell others when you see it." Man Bayadao, "Many of my books have been discovered by my husband, but this one is the only one I dare not let my husband see. Every time we read it quietly outside and dare not bring it into the classroom." Yin Or nodded, "Don't worry, I will be very careful. Books can be kept secretly, but what they said in the pavilion of the East Palace is not a secret. Not only the prince can know what they said from beginning to end, but the emperor also knows." He only snorted for Zhou Man and the others to scare his 2 precious daughters in the end, and then secretly said in his heart, "He will surely make the great Jin future generations." Recalling what they were discussing before, the emperor knocked on the table and asked Wei Ji, who was still staying with him to handle official business, "The Zhou Man family is engaged in business, so why not change their household registration?" Wei Ji has stayed in the palace for more time since he took over the job of Ji Xiang. He thought for a while and said, "Most of her family is still mainly farming land, and his family is not divided, so his membership is still based on Zhou Jin's identity is to be determined. The income of Zhou Jin, the head of the household, basically comes from the land, so he is naturally a good member." See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1842. The emperor nodded slightly and asked, "What do you think of the suggestions made by Bai Shan and others?" Even Wei Ji couldn't help but be cautious. He pondered for a while and said, "I'm afraid it won't be easy." The emperor also sighed, "Yeah, I'm afraid it won't be easy, so let's wait until the matter over Jiangnan is settled." Wei Ji agrees that walking too fast will inevitably lead to a fall. This matter involves too many people, so naturally you have to be more careful. The emperor and the minister tacitly ignored this topic, and as soon as Wei Ji left, the emperor said to Guzhong, "I warn the palace servants who are serving them today, and what they say in the pavilion is not allowed to go out." Guzhong hurriedly responded, and after a pause, he reminded in a low voice, "Your Majesty, listen to what they mean. If they can't think of it, they have to write a book to ask you for advice." Emperor. He was speechless for a while, I really don't know how high the sky is. Guzhong, however, heard the appreciation in the emperor's tone, smiled and didn't mention it again. Although the emperor is not afraid that they will write a book, but he is afraid that once the book is written, he will not be able to hide it. He didn't want these teenagers to die before they grew up, and he didn't want to bother to wipe their buttocks later, so the next day he went over to greet the Queen Mother when Zhou Man gave her acupuncture. The Queen Mother was quite happy at first, and was instructing the palace staff to prepare the emperor's favorite snacks and meals, but when she saw that the emperor had only said a few words to her, she called Zhou Man aside to speak alone. At first, she thought he was asking Zhou Man about her condition, but she went over with all her clothes and hair combed, but she heard him and Zhou Man say, "In short, this book is not allowed to be posted, and you can't even write it out, do you know?" Man Bao didn't expect the emperor to eavesdrop on the words, and sure enough, there are no secrets in the palace. The people who received the book have said so, she can't force it, can she? Their original intention was to ask for advice, and since the emperor did not want to ask Begwen to answer their questions for them, it would be meaningless for them to submit a book. "Don't write, don't write." Man Bao responded. On the other side of the screen, the Queen Mother, who only heard this half sentence, turned around in anger and went back. It happened that the palace people brought the emperor's favorite tea, and the Queen Mother said directly, "Throw it, don't." Policemen. They hesitated for a while, and when they saw the Queen Mother, they seemed to be even more angry, so they hurriedly took the dishes down. When Man Bao and the emperor came back and saw it, she asked casually, "This snack is still steaming, why did you throw it away?" The emperor did not understand. The Queen Mother raised her eyelids and glanced at the two of them, then looked at Man Bao. "Do you like to eat?" Man Bao took a look and found that there was still a plate of golden crisps on the plate, which was fried in a frying pan with meat and various ingredients wrapped in flour. She had eaten at Chang Yu's twice, and it was her favorite snack, and Man Bao also liked it, so she nodded. The Empress Dowager waved her hand generously and said, "I will reward you, come here, wrap up these snacks for Imperial Dr. Zhou." Informed maid. She couldn't help but glance at the emperor. The emperor hadn't noticed the abnormality yet, so he glanced at the dim sum on the plate and smiled and went to the Queen Mother's side to join in the fun. "Empress Mother, my son also likes to eat these dim sum, so you won't reward your son 2 pieces?" The Queen Mother said with a stern face, "You are the emperor, you can't eat what you want, do you still need Ijia to reward you? You are so old and have the nerve to grab food from a child." Emperor. He withdrew his smile and sat up straight in the chair, feeling that he was being scolded for no reason, but he didn't dare to make the Queen Mother angry. The mother and son were speechless for a moment. Because he got 3 trays of dim sum for nothing, Man Bao paused when he saw it, looked at the Queen Mother, looked at the emperor, then turned to look at the dim sum on the plate, and couldn't help scratching his head. She also carefully sat aside, and said to the Queen Mother, "Niang Niang, why are you angry again? Just now, His Majesty asked you again and again if you are in a good mood recently, how is your meal on weekdays, and I said yes, but you are now I'm angry, isn't this dismantling my desk?" The emperor couldn't help turning his head to look at Zhou Man. When did he ask these questions? No, how could Zhou Man speak to the Queen Mother in such a tone? The Queen Mother was not angry, but her face turned slightly, and she glanced at the emperor. The emperor was so blessed that he smiled at the Queen Mother. The Empress Dowager's face softened a little, and she said to Zhou Man, "You can go back after you're sick. Aren't you and Ijia talking about busyness, and there's always not enough time?" Man Bao responded with a sound, got up and saluted and left. Of course, before I left, I received 3 packets of paper-wrapped snacks, which were still hot in my hand. Carrying the medicine box, Man Bao slowly walked towards the East Palace with snacks. She even spared a bit and headed towards the Taiji Hall first. When the emperor's chariot followed, Man Bao had already squatted in the flower bed by the roadside and looked at the flowers and plants for a long time, but unfortunately she had dug up all the types of flowers and plants, otherwise it would be nothing to pluck some branches and leaves at this time. Man Bao turned to the side of the road, and the emperor knew at a glance that she was waiting for him, so he got off the chariot, waved to Zhou Man, who was bowing and saluting, and walked ahead first. Gu Zhong stopped behind with the palace people, and seeing that Zhou Man did not move, Gu Zhong gave her a wink and told her to follow quickly. Man Bao took the medicine box and ran after him. Gu Zhong waited for them to walk a little further before taking the palace servants to follow. "Your Majesty, you know that I am waiting for you." The emperor said, "I'm not stupid, you can say anything if you have anything." Zhou Mandao, Your Majesty, in fact, the Empress Dowager likes you to see her very much. The refreshments I saw in the Empress Dowager's palace in the past were mostly sweet and greasy desserts such as various soups and sweet-scented osmanthus cakes. I rarely see them. 3 desserts. She said, "I think, these 3 snacks are all prepared for your Majesty." The emperor fell silent. This was indeed his favorite snack. Seeing that he had listened, Man Bao said, "During the time I was seeing the Empress was the one I saw the most, then Princess Mingda and Princess Changjiao, and then there was His Royal Highness, only the 1st and 15th days of the first year. Only occasionally can I see His Majesty come over to greet the Queen Mother." Man Bao said, "Your Majesty is busy with government affairs, but sitting for a long time is not good for your health. It is best to walk for about half an hour every day. It happens to be from the Taiji Palace to the Queen Mother's palace, and then walk back and forth twice, and then go to the Imperial Garden. Just walk around." Listening to her looking for various reasons for him, the emperor couldn't help interrupting her. "Okay, I understand, you can go down." Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief. She was indeed too young to persuade people. Man Bao carried the medicine box and saluted with snacks, then turned around and was about to leave. The emperor suddenly looked at the paper bag in her hand and said, "This is what the Queen Mother prepared for me." Man Bao subconsciously hugged it tightly, and said, "The maiden rewarded me. It seems a little cold, and it may not be delicious, but don't worry, Your Majesty, I will finish it." He turned around and ran away. When the emperor saw her running away with the medicine box clanging and clanging, he was speechless for a while, and he turned to look at Gu Zhong behind him. Gu Zhong trotted forward immediately, and the emperor asked him angrily, "Are you such a stingy person?" Gu Zhong smiled and said, "No, it must be Taizhou who thought too much." The emperor's face looked better, he snorted and turned to leave. Gu Zhong hurriedly chased after him, "Is your Majesty not sitting in the chariot? Don't sit down. Didn't you listen to Zhou Man? Move around more." Gu Zhong did not dare to speak any more. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1843. Man Bao took advantage of Bai Shan and the others to find them with snacks when get out of class was over. There was a quarter of an hour break between classes, and a few of them sat together on the railings under the porch to eat snacks. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang also liked the golden cake the most, and while eating, they asked, "Where did you get the snack? It will cost a lot of money for the Imperial Kitchen to make the snack, right?" "I don't need money, the Queen Mother gave it to me." Man Bao gave Yin or another soft snack, let him eat, and said what the Emperor told her, "Your Majesty said that we are not allowed to write that book, it will cause trouble." Lu Huan immediately asked, "Do you still have to tell my grandfather?" He didn't want to go to his grandfather at all about these things, and he always thought he'd be beaten up. Man Bao glanced at him and said, "Don't say it, just let us gossip when we are bored. Adults are cruel, and if they don't go with their wishes, they can't wait to kill each other. Why can't everyone be peaceful, seeking common ground while reserving differences? Bai Shan nodded in agreement. So officialdom is dangerous, let's listen to His Majesty. Kong Jiju stood behind them with his hands behind his back and asked, what is the sinister officialdom? The 5 people who were sitting on the railing and swaying their legs almost fell off the railing when they heard the sound. They immediately turned around and saw Kong Jiju standing behind them. The classmates who saw them couldn't help laughing softly. Some people even lowered their voices and said, well, let them be eye-catching all day long. Are you arrested today? The voice was not loud, but everyone didn't speak at this time, so the voice could still be heard clearly by everyone in the quiet environment. Kong Jiju's eye knife flew over immediately. Bai Shan and the others lowered their heads and did not dare to look up to see who it was, but Kong Jiju directly pointed out the other party's name, Lu Yu, come forward. Lu Yu. He didn't dare to resist, he lowered his head and took a step forward, and he simply folded his hands to admit his mistake. Sir, the student is wrong. Kong Jiju asked him, what's wrong? Lu Yu felt uncomfortable for a moment in front of Bai Shan and the others, and said, I shouldn't say little things about my classmates. Kong Jiju's expression did not improve at all, and he asked, just now they said that the government should seek common ground while reserving differences. Let me ask you, where did these words come from? Lu Yu lowered his head silently. How could he know where it came from? How do you know they didn't say it casually? Kong Jiju's face became even darker, and he shouted, if I ask you something, just say it if you know it, and if you don't know it, say you don't know. How did I teach you? Lu Yu was taken aback, and hurriedly confessed his mistake, and said honestly, students don't know. Many people in the classroom quietly stuck their heads out of the windows to watch, and a few went straight out of the door to watch, and many waiters came out of the office. Mr. Zhuang was also in this column, and at this time, he was honestly looking down at Confucius and teaching the students. Kong Jiju then turned to look at Bai Shan and the others, called Bai Shan's name, and asked, where do you think it came from? When Kong Jiju was training people, Bai Shan lowered his head and quickly chewed the contents of his mouth and swallowed it hard. Now Kong Jiju asked him if there were still some leftover snacks in his mouth. He swallowed again before lowering his head and whispering, from records of the Grand Historian, music book. Kong Jiju didn't wait for him to finish speaking, but he called Bai Erlang's name again and asked, Bai Chang, what do you say? Bai Erlang's cold sweat broke down in a flash. He racked his brains for a moment, and said a little stumblingly, the music is the same, the courtesy is different. The rest can't be remembered. He glanced nervously at Bai Shan, but he was a little far away from Bai Shan's position, so he could only look left at Zhou Man. When Man Bao met his gaze, he raised his eyes slightly, and quietly stretched out a finger beside him. Bai Erlang said with uncertainty, the same. Man Bao's finger quietly pointed to himself and Bai Shan, and winked at him slightly. Bai Erlang said, the same is a blind date. Kong Jiju lifted his eyelids and glanced at him. Bai Erlang immediately lowered his head and didn't dare to gnaw, and Man Bao's fingers didn't dare to move. Kong Jiju didn't notice their movements in private. In fact, except for Mr. Zhuang standing on the other side, no one noticed their small movements. After all, Zhou Man just moved his fingers. Kong Jiju, what's next? Bai Erlang's forehead was sweating, and he quietly glanced at Man Bao again. Mr. Zhuang couldn't help but coughed lightly. Man Bao, who wanted to give him a hint, immediately lowered his head and didn't move. Bai Erlang also became honest, lowered his head and whispered, Sir, the rest of the students don't remember. Kong Jiju's face was much prettier than before. He nodded slightly and said, at least you know where it came from and what it means. Lu Huan, who was standing on the other side of Bai Erlang, shivered a little, for fear that Kong Jiju would turn his head and ask him. Kong Jiju just skipped him, and after looking at Yin or a glance, his eyes fell on Zhou Man, his expression became more gentle, and he asked, "Zhou Man, tell me." Man Bao quietly breathed a sigh of relief, and said respectfully, "Those who are happy are the same, those who are polite are different. Those who are the same will kiss each other, and those who are different will respect each other. If music wins, the flow will flow, and ritual winds will leave." Kong Jiju nodded slightly, nodded in satisfaction, then turned his head to the onlookers and said, "If the etiquette is established, the nobles and the lowly will wait. If the music is the same, the upper and lower levels will be harmonious. This principle must not only be learned now, but also in the future. Keep it in mind, if everyone can seek common ground while reserving differences, then they will be able to harmonize with each other, make each other love each other, regulate their behavior, and make the honor and inferiority orderly, then the world will be in harmony." He looked at Lu Yu and said solemnly, "Lu Yu, do you know what's wrong with you?" Lu Yu lowered his head and dared not speak. Kong Jiju sighed and said, "Respect each other if you are different. You have differences, but you didn't keep the etiquette, so you spoke evil words." No matter what Lu Yu thought in his heart, he apologized very honestly at this moment, saying that he was wrong. As soon as he admitted his mistake, Kong Jiju's violent temper came up, and he scolded directly, "So you should read more. Look at Bai Shan and Bai Cheng, they are several years younger than you, and they can even memorize the historical records. How old are you? How old are you? And you don't even know where it comes from seeking common ground while reserving differences." Kong Jiju went from reading to etiquette, and from etiquette to their historical achievements. He read it for a quarter of an hour, and it was long past the time for class. But no one dared to interrupt Kong Jiju. Even the musician who was in charge of ringing the bell didn't ring the bell, and just stood there with the club and didn't move. The prince, who was dealing with affairs in Zhan's mansion, came to take a curious look when he heard the movement behind him. Standing at the gate of the courtyard, he saw Kong Jiju pointing at a group of students to teach him a lesson. He immediately turned around and was about to leave. After 2 steps, he realized something was wrong, and came back to stand at the gate. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1844. Not scolding him, what is he hiding? He listened to it and felt that he was in a good mood. He has been taught by Kong Jiju since he was a child. When he was young, the teacher-student relationship was still very good, but later he seemed to realize that he liked martial arts more than Zaiwan, so when Kong Jiju disciplined him from time to time, the prince was very I hate taking Confucius wine sacrifice class. In the past few years, the relationship between teachers and students has deteriorated to the extreme. Kong Jiju has written to the resigner more than once in order to not be his teacher. The 2 teachers and students even quarreled in court. The prince fainted more than once, and Kong Jiju became angry with the prince more than once and lost his mind. The teachers and students killed each other very much. Disrespectful, he turned his head and left as if he didn't see this person. I didn't expect him to hate Kong Jiju to teach people so much, but listening to him teach others is so happy now. After listening for a while, the prince turned around and left when he felt that he was in a good mood. He also instructed Eunuch Wu, "Go back and ask the kitchen to send some delicious food to the students who were scolded by Kong Jiju, which means that they are alone." Eunuch Wu, then, "What about the person who was praised by Confucius?" The prince snorted, "Don't worry about them." So, during lunch, Lu Yu and a few students who faced Kong Jiju's reprimands had 2 extra dishes. The waiter who came to deliver the food boxes to them respectfully expressed that this was given to them by the prince, thinking that they had worked hard. Several people from Lu Yu. It seems that they should be happy, but at this time their hearts are complicated and they are not very happy. Bai Shan and the others turned their heads to look at the dishes in their food box. Lu Yu and the others were angry, "What are you looking at?" A few people withdrew their gazes, and there was only a touch of regret in their eyes, and they said that they were not envious at all. After the meal was over, a few people walked out of the dining hall and saw Mr. Zhuang standing in the yard looking up at the sky. Hearing the movement, he looked back at them. Without saying a word, he turned and went to Changguan Hall in front. Bai Shan first self-examined, did not find out what he had done wrong, and looked at Man Bao and Bai Erlang suspiciously. Have you two committed something? Man Bao and Bai Erlang did not speak, and silently followed Mr. Zhuang. When Bai Shan saw it, what else could he not understand? I can only talk to Yin or, and then go with them to see Mr. Mr. Zhuang sat alone in the office, and the three of them stood in front of him honestly. Mr. Zhuang said, Bai Chang, copy the records of the grand historian, Li Shu 10 times, Zhou Man, you are responsible for cleaning the office of Changguan Hall this month. Bai Erlang almost cried, and Man Bao was about to cry. But facing Mr. Zhuang, the two did not dare to cry, and bowed their heads in response. Then Mr. Zhuang asked them, do you know why you are being punished? The two bowed their heads together and said, I know, we are not sincere. Mr. Zhuang snorted, Sir, can you fool me? Go down and write another article admitting your mistake. The two bowed their heads in response, and Bai Shan bowed to them and stepped back. On the way back, Bai Shan said, I can't do anything about copying the article, but I can still help with cleaning. Bai Erlang only remembered this moment, and couldn't help but pouted in grievance, Mr. is also favoritism. Bai Shan said to him, when Dr. Li taught us the historical records, he said that he would endorse it. Why didn't you memorize it? How do you recite so much? And it's not that I didn't recite it alone. You go and ask Lu Huan if he has recited it, Bai Erlang said confidently, you think everyone is like you, just read an article twice and remember it. Down. Bai Shan shook his head, for such a thick book, I need to recite it carefully to memorize it, otherwise, I would have memorized it at the time, and I would have forgotten it in 2 days. Man Bao nodded, some of the words in the book of music are very reasonable. The world is complicated, but education can make things simple, so it is worth reading, and you should memorize it. Bai Erlang turned and left, ignoring them. Man Bao thought that she was going to add one more thing tomorrow, so he couldn't help but sighed and went back with his head drooping, I'm going back to prepare lessons, I'll be very busy tomorrow. The next day, Man Bao came back from class at the imperial physician's office. He just wanted to rest his eyes and brain, so he folded his sleeves to fetch water, and then went to wipe the table for the lecturers and doctors in Changguan Hall. There are 4 waiters in an office room, there are 2 office rooms in total, and there are also 2 tea rooms next to them where they rest. In addition, there is a small tea room dedicated to teaching the prince, and a separate office for Kongjiju. Man Bao brought water to scrub room by room. The attendants didn't know that she was punished, and they were a little surprised when they saw it. What is Zhou Bianzwen doing? In terms of official position, she is still above them. Man Bao smiled embarrassedly and glanced at Mr. Zhuang, not knowing how to explain. It can't be said that they cheated Kongjiju together and were punished by Mr. Zhuang, right? How bad is it to say it to Confucius? Mr. Zhuang explained with a smile, the child is naughty. I think she has a lot of time, so I asked her to clean the table for everyone. Everyone understood as soon as they heard it, Zhou Man must have made a mistake, and her husband punished her. The waiters said that the doctor smiled and asked Zhou Man to clean up. Although Zhuang Sun's official position was still under Zhou Man, she was his apprentice, and his disciples and teachers were Gangchang ethics. No one felt that there was anything wrong with Zhuang Sun instructing Zhou Man to work. This was not a matter of officialdom. Man Bao wiped the 2 offices, and when they got to the tea room, Bai Shan and the others also left school at noon, so he brought a basin of water to help. When he reached Kongjiju's office, he asked the 2 of them enthusiastically, is it because you were punished for eating and chatting in Changguan Hall yesterday? They didn't dare to say that they were punished for cheating, but they didn't dare to offer sacrifices to Kong, so they lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak. Kong Jiju smiled and shook his head, and said kindly, "Mr. Zhuang is too strict." Man Bao didn't have time to agree in his heart, so Kong Jiju continued, "But it is because Mr. Zhuang is so strict with you that you have today's achievements." After sighing, he sighed and said, "It's a pity that the prince is noble, and it's not easy to punish, otherwise how can you know that you won't be able to teach a good student?" Bai Shan asked while cleaning his bookshelf, "Sir, will a good student be a good king?" Kong Jiju was stunned for a moment, sitting and thinking. Bai Shan and Man Bao waited for a while to see Kong Jiju just dazed and not talking. They looked at each other, shrugged, and continued cleaning. When they finished cleaning and saw that Kong Jiju was still contemplating, the two of them didn't bother him, turned around and went out. The two handed the wooden basin to the waiter outside, took a long breath and returned to the dining hall to eat. Yin or the others were still sitting in the dining hall, and when they saw them coming back, they pointed to the food box and said, "Eat it quickly, it's still hot." The two sat down and opened the food box to eat. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1845. Bai Erlang has already finished eating, and is holding a book of historical records on his back. He wants to read it thoroughly before writing, so that the speed is faster. This is the experience he has accumulated over the years of copying books. Yin Or smiled and asked Zhou Man and Bai Shan, "Do you need our help tomorrow?" Man Bao and Bai Shan shook their heads together and said, "Forget it, there are too many people there. Our husband will definitely be angry when he sees it. It will be fine to punish me for another month." Yin Or nodded and didn't mention it again. Feng Zongping and Yi Ziang also finished their meal, and after pushing the food box, they walked over to see them, and asked curiously, "You were so popular yesterday, and Zhuangxi said he didn't praise you, so why should he punish you?" Yes, in just half a day, the news of Bai Shan's Human and Bai Cheng being punished by Zhuangxi spread throughout the Chongguan Museum. Bai Shan did not explain that he was not punished, but acquiesced. Seeing that the three did not speak, Feng Zongping shook his head and said, "Just because you are sitting on the railing to eat? Zhuangxi is too strict." Bai Shan said, "We won't tell you the reason, don't ask." Feng Zong calmed down for a while, and he said, "I am concerned about you, not gossiping." Not to mention the three Bai Shan, he didn't even believe Yin Or and Lu Huan who were on the side, and he didn't know if it was because his grandfather was the minister of punishment. Nothing compares. You must know that Zhao Liaolang is the nephew of the queen, and there are a lot of relatives in the palace. From time to time, he can go to his cousins and cousins to eat, talk, and he is not well informed. Yi Ziang on the side laughed out loud, dragged Feng Zongping away. "Okay, let's go and rest for a while, there is still class in the afternoon." Speaking of class, Man Bao remembered that she had to go to the Taiyuan hospital in the afternoon to talk with Xiao Yuan about the imperial doctor's office, and then she had to give the queen mother an injection, and then she had to eat quickly. During the rest of the 10-day period, the three of them had a very fulfilling life, and they basically didn't have time to play, so as soon as they left the palace, Man Bao couldn't help but lie on his bed and sleep late. The same goes for Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. When they woke up, they could smell the smell of meat in the air. They followed the smell to the kitchen of the West No. 1 hospital, and saw that Mr. Chien was making steamed meat with noodles, and there were dozens of bowls in front of them. Man Bao opened his mouth wide in surprise and asked Xiao Chien, "Sister-in-law, has our family made a fortune? How do you make so much steamed meat?" Xiao Chien said with a smile, "This is not for the family. The family's food is steamed in the pot. I don't steam much. I only steam 10 bowls. The three of us will be finished by one share. Then these. This is going to be taken to the restaurant," she laughed. Before you sent steamed pork to each family, but people kept asking about it, and Rokuro also said it was delicious, so the restaurant served this dish. Vegetable. It was originally made by Rokuro and the others. I occasionally went over to help, but the guests said that the taste was not the same, so I just took over this matter, specially prepared the ingredients for them, and then they took it to the restaurant. Just steam it. Looking at the bowls lined up on the wooden board, Man Bao asked in surprise, "How much can you sell in one day?" Mr. Fang brought in a bowl of ground peppercorns from the outside, and said with a smile, "That's more than that, it's still set by the restaurant. 50 bowls will be sold a day, and there will be no more." She said, "Not only do the customers in the store want to eat it, but the people you gave as gifts for the new year also often went to the store to buy meat with good quality and steam it by themselves, return the bowl the next day, and buy another one to go back. Business all right." Xiao Jian said with a smile, "It's also the recipe that Manbao found before. I changed it." Dad said that the recipe can't be told casually, and it will be passed down to the family in the future. Mr. Fang stopped talking, and secretly thought in his heart, "I'm afraid it won't work to inherit the family. Obviously the same material, what can they do?" Bai Shan asked curiously, "Anyone here to buy raw materials?" "There are too many people, including Tang Da's family, Yang Gongzi's family, Zheng Da's shopkeeper's family, Xiao Yuanzhen's family, and Lu Imperial Physician's family," Fang said with a smile. "Originally, the business was done in the restaurant, and the meat was also there. The seasoning should be over there, but to make so much meat, the table is not enough. The fifth and sixth uncles are planning to build 2 more long tables in the back kitchen, and they also need to build a shed, so they will be prepared at home for the time being and sent over." Man Bao nodded, her eyes turned back and forth on the bowl in the circle. She said, "Although steamed meat is delicious, you can't eat it all the time. It's too greasy and it's not good for your health." Everyone looked at Man Bao together. Man Bao said, "So let's sell less, especially because Imperial Physician Lu and the others are getting older, and they have to eat less meat. After the rest is steamed, I will bring a few bowls to the palace, and then I can share them with my classmates." Fang. Xiao Jian couldn't help but nod her forehead and scolded with a smile, "It's you who should eat less, look at your face." When Xiao Jian said this, he couldn't help but hesitantly asked, "Are you losing weight? Didn't you gain a lot of weight before entering the palace in the first 10 days? After all, I took several days off during the Chinese New Year, and the food at home was relatively good. I didn't even have homework, and most of my work was suspended. So Manbao is still a little rounder, but at this moment, the meat she raised during the Chinese New Year seems to have almost fallen off." Xiao Jian looked at Manbao distressedly, reached out and touched her little face, and asked, "Did you not eat well in the palace?" Manbao was about to shake his head when Bai Shan stabbed her in the lower back, and Manbao nodded. Xiao Jian said, "It's all right, my sister-in-law will make up for you in the past 2 days. You can go to the palace and see if you can bring some food in." She remembered something and asked, "Don't you have to go to the Imperial Physician's office for classes every day? Or should I ask Data to bring you something to eat every day?" Manbao's eyes are sure, "Can you do this?" Manbao immediately nodded repeatedly despite Bai Shan's stop. Bai Shan can only say, "You only have 3 days of classes in the morning, and one of them ends early, and you don't have lunch outside the palace." Manbao said, "It's good to have 2 more meals in a 10-day period." Little Qian nodded again and again, "Yes, eat 2 more good meals, and slowly the meat will be raised again." Bai Shan can only tell, "Be careful, you can't be very close to the outside when you go out of the palace." Manbao nodded, "I have something in mind." Little Qian said, "I asked Big Head to put the food box at the door, not to get close to you." Manbao laughed happily, then held Xiao Qian's hand and asked, "Sister-in-law, are you tired of doing all this?" "I'm not tired, Why is it tiring to cook? Xiao Qian said with a smile, it's much easier than working in the fields. Fang Shi smiled and said, I'm quite tired from cooking the medicine, so my aunt asked me. Man Bao immediately asked, sister-in-law why are you tired? I'll give you a needle. As soon as Mr. Fang thought of the long needle, he immediately refused, forget it, I'll just sit for a while by myself. Good night. Add tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1846. When Man Bao's punishment was over and Bai Erlang also completed the task of transcribing, the capital had returned to the earth in spring, green buds and green leaves appeared both inside and outside the palace, and many plants also bloomed beautiful flowers, colorful, among them peony. The most beautiful flowers. The palace is full of birds and flowers, and the gardener in the palace brings pots of peony flowers that have been blooming or are about to bloom into the garden. In addition to the potted plants, there are also clusters of peony flowers planted in the flower beds. Man Bao seemed to like it very much. Mingda and Chang Yu picked a lot of flowers for her. Knowing that she likes to grow flowers and plants by herself, when cutting flowers, they deliberately cut the flowers and branches underneath. Peony flower seed Manbao had been recorded, but Mingda and Changjiu gave her away, so she accepted it, separated the flower from the branch, and cut the branch into 2 sections. She directly hung it on the forum and exchanged it with others. You can't eat or drink things like flowers and plants, and most of the world doesn't have the strange genetic condition of the future world, so few people will exchange with her. Occasionally, when the remarks she uploads say that it is a famous species of peony, some people will be moved, but because she is hanging branches, it will take at least 2 years to cultivate and bloom. So few people are willing to spend something in exchange. Even if there is, the exchange is also very cheap. For example, the host of a system is responsible for collecting various cultural relics, so he took a pair of chopsticks in exchange for a pair of branches from Manbao. Manbao was originally curious about what kind of chopsticks could be included in the system, so she agreed to exchange it, but she was stunned as soon as she got it. Isn't this just ordinary bamboo chopsticks? Manbao didn't believe in evil and showed it to Bai Shan. Bai Shan glanced at it and asked, you still brought chopsticks into the palace from outside the palace? Manbao. After she went back, she threw the chopsticks in Keek's space and left it alone. People from other worlds on the forum were not very interested, and in the end, people from Keek's world exchanged points with her. DRD also bought several pairs of branches. Seeing this, Manbao contacted her, DRD, do you still study peony flowers? DRD said, I am short of money, so I want to cultivate several kinds of peonies with relatively stable genes to make money. She revealed some words, our research room recently received a large order from the encyclopedia, and the other party offered us a high price to study the heritable superior rice seeds. I took a look at the original rice seeds and their genes submitted by them. It was found that the genes of rice seeds in your world are the same. The genes of peony flowers in your world are very stable. I want to cultivate them, so that I can make money and study related genes. Maybe there will be something in common, and I can also develop ideas. As soon as Manbao heard it, he immediately knew that she was taking her order, and he was refreshed and asked, then where have you been in your research now? DRD replied, this is just the beginning, but we have a breeding base, and we can grow 3 crops of rice a year. Now the original seeds sent have already heading, and the first generation experimental data will be available soon. She asked, I remember that you are very interested in good heritable rice seeds, so I want to ask you, do you want it when I have bred it? Manbao. How could she answer this? Yes, This list is the one made by teacher Mo and the encyclopedia on her behalf, and the encyclopedia will give her the result free of charge. No, she is really interested, she really wants to know the research progress from DRD in real time, and her post is still hanging on the top of the forum. It is too fake to say no. Perhaps seeing that Joe Man's reply speed was much slower than before, DRD sent another message and asked jokingly, "It takes so long to think about, the person who asked the encyclopedia to entrust me with breeding good heritable rice seeds is not. Could it be you?" Manbaoke sent a message at the same time, "Is it expensive?" Two messages went in and out of the mailbox at the same time, and Manbao saw that it was too late to withdraw it. The other side was also silent for a while, and then DRD knocked on the mailbox twice, and asked in the air, "I have rummaged through the posts in the entire forum, and you are the only one who will be buying good genetic rice seeds, but there is a message under your post. People in the two worlds deserve and want, but they are not even willing to pay for the top post, and obviously they are not willing to cooperate with the encyclopedia and entrust me to cultivate. So, it's you, right?" Manbao stared at the mailbox without speaking, and couldn't help but ask Keek, "Are all people in your world so smart?" Keek said, "It won't be stupid anyway." Manbao thought for a while, and replied to the message, "Why can't it be someone from your world who is placing the order?" "Impossible," she said, "although we need to buy new seeds for planting every year, it is difficult for rice seeds sown for one season to inherit the good genes of the previous generation, but people in this world are not short of seed money, not to mention the seed money and fertilizer cost for sowing every year are subsidized by the alliance, and the farmers do not spend much. They can also choose the seeds they sow according to their needs, whether they want to have strong taste, soft waxy, or high yield. Is it to cook porridge, or to cook rice? There are so many varieties, you can choose the seeds according to your own needs. Why should it be fixed as a heritable rice seed?" DRD may also input by voice, and quickly replied to her, "Not to mention the breeding requirements for placing an order, high yield, drought resistance, flood resistance, pest control, and heritable stable genes are needed. Except for the last requirement, the other requirements are the most basic requirements. Here, any rice seed can meet these requirements," DRD said, "so the people who place the order will not be people in our world." There is another point she didn't say. When the encyclopedia placed the order, it said that in order to adapt the rice seeds to their proper living environment, the cultivated seeds will grow in the set growth environment to ensure that the genes are heritable and the conditions are acceptable. Delivery upon arrival. To test whether the gene is heritable, at least 5 experiences of planting inheritance are required, and the encyclopedia limits it to 5 years. What age is it? And it will take 5 years to plant 5 rice seeds. That is definitely not in her world. Judging from her long experience in contacting the forum, most of the people who really place the order are Joe Man. I just didn't know what Joe Man was using to impress the encyclopedia, and they even asked them to come forward. DRD said, "I remember you said that you have a teacher in our world. Is that Professor Mo, the doctoral supervisor of paleontology at Union University?" Manbao let out a snort and asked excitedly, "Is Mr. Mo famous among you?" When DRD saw her reply, she knew that she was indirectly admitting it, but she might have signed a non-disclosure agreement, so she didn't say it explicitly. Okay, this little girl, she actually boarded the big ship of the encyclopedia without making a sound. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1847. She replied, famous, but his most famous is not in the field of paleontology and ancient medicine, but his achievements in the genetic variation of intelligent organisms, but he likes ancient medicine, and I heard that it has been published in recent years. He has read a lot of papers on ancient medicine, and I don't know where he got so many cases, and he has also been certified by schools and encyclopedias. But I probably know now that you gave him those cases. Man Bao responded, expressing his affirmation of her guess. DRD knew this and asked, how did you get him and the encyclopedia to stand up for you? Do you know how much your initial investment in this project is? Man Bao didn't know. She directly signed the result agreement with the encyclopedia. They finally gave her qualified grain seeds, and she gave them meteorites. DRD said, there are 8 million points in the account now, but even if you have the original grain seeds as a reference, if you want to cultivate stable and developable grain seeds in our environment, you still have to meet these requirements for you. The requirements also take a lot of time and effort. The later investment will only be more. Man Bao asked, is there not enough money? Why do you still need to cultivate flower seeds to make the shortfall money? No, I'm short of money for another experimental project. DRD didn't say it in detail, but Man Bao also guessed from her words why she would take Teacher Mo's list, because she was short of money. Man Bao thought thoughtfully, so in fact, my project is not difficult. Is it a project that you can quickly realize? DRD responded and said, although it is difficult, it is not difficult to overcome what can be seen. She still wanted to find out what Zhou Man was trading with the Encyclopedia Museum. The main thing was that Zhou Man's collection direction and her research direction mostly overlapped. Many of her experiments could find the original genes from Zhou Man's time. Therefore, very interested. Man Bao felt that they were friends after all, so he didn't hide her, and said directly, I can't tell you, because I signed a non-disclosure agreement. DRD, you whispered, I don't tell anyone. Man Bao, Keek is the system of the encyclopedia. I am using it to communicate with you now. If you don't tell others, the encyclopedia will know. DRD actively explained to Man Bao, it's not like this. Although it can be viewed, the entire alliance is so large that it won't specifically stare at you. She sighed and said, I also have some research in information technology, so if you send me an email, I will clear it immediately. What should I do if the encyclopedia cannot find any traces? Keek couldn't bear it anymore, and reminded Man Baodao, don't listen to her, no matter how you clear the traces on the internet, they still exist. As long as the code is generated, it can be traced back. It may be a little difficult for others, but the main system wants to find it. Code thing. No one pays attention to their speech now, but don't forget, they are the key observation objects of the main system. Once the main system thinks about checking it, it is difficult for even Keek to deceive it perfectly. It doesn't want to take risks for this kind of thing. Man Bao was naturally not stupid. He declined DRD, and asked her in turn, but since you have guessed it, there will be new progress in the experiment in the future, can you send me a copy too? Maybe faster. DRD was counter-killed, and in order to test the process, she still had no objection. DRD said, it's unimaginable that I would be at a disadvantage in negotiating with you. Man Bao searched for a long time in the mailbox, and finally found a grinning emoji package for her to go back to the past. Keek said that in the communication of the future world, the rational application of emoji packages can promote the development of interpersonal relationships. When DRD received this expression pack, he could only reply with a helpless expression, and then he bargained with her, since it is your order, I still need some test specimens here, can you provide me with it? Man Bao asked enthusiastically, what specimen do you need? Collect more kinds of grain seeds. Grain seeds grown in various regions are needed. If possible, I hope to provide rice for survival in the wild. I remember that the history of civilization in your place is not very long. There should be a lot of these things in the wild, right? Man Bao thought hard, I haven't seen wild rice seeds in the wild. Does it count if I scatter the rice seeds into the wild and let them grow freely? DRD, it doesn't count. She was annoyed by the child, and then asked, aren't you Professor Mo's student? Why don't you even understand this? Man Bao said, Mr. Mo only teaches me medicine, and I don't need to learn botany from him. DRD remembered something, and immediately asked, I'm very good at botany, and you are recording this, why do you have to learn it? Your ancient medicine is also closely related to botany, isn't it? Do you want it? Take a class with me. Manbao asked, are you qualified to start a class? This sentence hits the red heart, making DRD silent for a long time. After a while, she replied, not yet, but I will apply. Manbao smiled and said, when you have a certificate, I will cheer for you as long as you start the class. DRD, I always feel that something is wrong, but I can't figure out what is wrong. If you can't think of it, DRD doesn't want it anymore. Recently, the poor DRD directly clicked on the groups of peony branches and asked, this is very useful for studying your plant genes, even if you provide it to me. Manbao, who had made a lot of money recently but didn't spend much, responded directly, okay, take it, do you want it? I still have ordinary varieties, I'll give you tomorrow. DRD refuses to come, okay, you will put it on the forum tomorrow, and I will set up transaction points when I am online. Don't set it in advance, or you will be careful to be taken. Manbao responded, then smiled, and said, if you cultivate a new peony flower, or a genetically stable variety, don't forget to give me a copy. DRD, I cultivated this thing for flower companies. What are you doing here? Don't you already have the original variety? No, these peonies belong to others, so I'll prune the branches or something. DRD, the co-author is the white wolf with empty gloves. Manbao urged, is it okay? My family has a large garden, and there are still a few species in it, but the flowers from your side look good when you just brought them in, but there are all kinds of flowers that have grown over the years. There is one plant. Even the knives can't stop slashing, but it's terrifying. DRD said, then you must buy the cheapest variety. Basically, it only blooms in 1 year, and the genes are extremely unstable. After a wave of flowers, the genes will be out of order. You should buy the more expensive ones, and they are better now. The peony flowers can maintain their genetic stability for about 5 years. It seems that they were researched after you collected them in the early years. However, the varieties are still relatively simple, and due to the influence of the original genes, some of the petals are not as good as the existing ones. Of course, the first time she included peony flowers, she bought the cheapest pot on Yazoo City Street. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1848. Of course, Manbao didn't say that, but encouraged DRD, saying, the branches I put on the forum now are all good varieties, the petals and colors are very good, you study hard, you must be. It is possible to cultivate better and more stable peony flowers than now, and then make a lot of money. Although the words are very childish, they can impress DRD very much. Many of DRD's research needs money to support. Unlike Mr. Mo, that one can enter the Alliance Research Laboratory casually, and many people come to him for research with money. After all, his achievements in life sciences are not low, but DRD is different. Before the forum opened, she was still a researcher who needed to run around looking for investment to do a small experiment. Although she brought a few research students, but she was so poor, they naturally wouldn't be much richer. In the past 6 or 7 years, because of the opening of the forum, she found Joe Man, and she was able to get a lot of primitive species from her, so that she could cultivate all kinds of things suitable for the present, and then she made a lot of money, and the money she earned could support her. Area of interest. Although she is much older than Joe Man and has more social experience, she is a researcher in the school and her living environment is relatively simple. Seeing Joe Man's straightforward words of encouragement, DRD was quite happy and ambitious. Okay, when it's time to cultivate it, I'll give you a copy. Anyway, the two of them are separated by a world, and giving her a copy does not violate the rules with party A in her world, they still get unique peony seeds. Thinking of this, DRD felt relieved and said, "Come on, you can modify the transaction price." She said, "The transaction price cannot be 0, you can set a 1. Manbao went to change it, and then several sets of branches on her forum were sold to DRD with the total price of 1 point. The hosts of other worlds and researchers in the future world who were visiting the forum occasionally found that they immediately exploded in the forum. A researcher directly took a screenshot of their transaction and posted it, questioning, "Is this a private transaction? Or fraud?" The ID of this host is a bit familiar. The host of a world said, "I remembered, it is a host who specializes in collecting animals and plants. It seems that she is the one who collects animals and plants in our forum. I want to talk to her. She bought a tiger from their world, but because what I could record was ore, she didn't want to exchange it with me, and she said she couldn't find a tiger." Manbao, who was about to leave the forum, saw the post that had popped up, and couldn't help but clicked incuriously. When he saw the second floor, he couldn't help but reply, "I didn't lie to you, I really looked for it. If there is no tiger, I can't catch it even if I find it, even if I catch it, it will be recorded by the system first, and the rest will be sold on the forum." The second floor replied, "Who are you lying? You have the system in hand, it's not easy to catch a tiger." Manbao was shocked when he saw it, and immediately went to ask Keek, "Keek, can you still catch tigers?" "Keek, this function has not been developed for the time being." Manbao breathed a sigh of relief, and she just said, why didn't she remember that Keek was so powerful? But Keek can't do it, it doesn't mean other people's systems can't do it. She asked very enviously and a little jealously, "Your system is so powerful that it can catch tigers. What else can it catch? Can a big bear do it too?" Seeing this reply on the second floor, he thought that Joe Man was mocking him, and became furious. "Spicy chicken, you can exchange if you want, if you don't want to, say you don't want to, I hate you hypocrites who talk and push things." Manbao. Keek couldn't help but communicate with each other's system. "Is your host so grumpy?" The system on the second floor said calmly, "Just get used to it, he can't hit you anyway." Keek, don't you know that he is so angry that he is so short-lived? Can your mission be completed? The system on the second floor replied to Keek very calmly, "Don't worry, he made a lot of money with me, and hired a lot of people to dig around a few years ago. I think it will take a few years for me to complete the collection. I can almost go back to the Alliance. How are you doing?" After being silent for a long time, Keek said, "My host is 14 years old and 4 months old this year." The system on the second floor is not calm at the moment. He looked at Keek's ID and couldn't help but say, "It's U0531. You went out more than 10 years ago, right? You went out a year earlier than me, you just changed the host." "No, I have always been this host." The system on the second floor understood it and couldn't help but say, "Brother, you can't think about it too much. How far have you upgraded to now?" Keek, level 6. The system on the second floor said, "I'm already level 10, and I can return to the Alliance with 2 levels left. Based on my performance, I should be able to extend my service period for 20 years before returning to the factory for reconstruction." Keek said, "If my host lives for a long time, I may not be able to return to the Alliance in 70 or 80 years. No, are you upgrading so slowly?" Keek said, "No hurry, take your time. But the upgrade is so slow, what if the main system judges that your performance is poor and unqualified, and you are qualified? After formatting, they are not them anymore. Although it does not seem to have changed, it is still the same program, but all the code retained in the program will disappear. Humans have memory, and their code is equivalent to their memory. Although the systems can't think about deep-seated reasons, they all know that they can't be formatted. They come out to perform tasks. One is naturally a program setting, and the other is not formatted for upgrading. Of course, in theory, they will be obsessed with the second point, naturally because it is set up in the program. Keek accidentally communicated too much with the system on the second floor. I saw that its host has already replied to several posts with the host on the second floor. Seeing that the smell of gunpowder is getting stronger and stronger, the other party is eager to complain about their illegal transactions. Now, it said to the system on the second floor, 0561, tell your host, my host is still a cub. 0561 said, okay. It had to interrupt its violent host to continue typing, saying, host, the host of the other party is still a cub. 14, in their program, was a child who couldn't be younger. The second floor was obviously stagnant, and he became suspicious. Cub. Can you get the system? What can't you do? Although it was also very surprised, it judged that 0531 should have an accident when identifying the host, so it had to choose the other party, but after all, they came from one place, so it said for 0531, the standards for each system are different. 0531 the other party should be only 2 to 3 years old when he recognizes the master. That's what it calculated based on the time it departed at 0531, if it didn't spend a lot of time on the road. Second floor. See you at 11 o'clock. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1849. He went to delete his own building on the forum. Manbao was talking non-stop in the forum, and then asked the system to convert it into text. He had already said a long paragraph and was about to send it out, when he saw that the floor had been deleted. She gave a huh and asked Keek curiously, what's wrong? Keek just glanced at it and said, the other party has admitted defeat. When Manbao heard this, he was refreshed, he smiled, and said, it seems that I am getting better and better. Because the two of you came and I replied to a lot of floors, and there were also some floor analysis during the period, and there were even people who were watching the fun and provoking it, and the posts gradually became hot. Seeing that the second floor suddenly deleted his speech, everyone shouted, what's going on? Why did the host of 0561 delete the floor? Is this threatened? No way, there are so many worlds apart, no one knows who is from which world. Can you be threatened after a fight? I just went through the past posts of the two hosts 0561 and 0531, and found an interesting phenomenon, you see. Did you see? 0561 has the air of a big boss whether it's a post or a reply, and who else is arrogant? Look at 0531 again, her posts are all slow, and all she wants to trade are some worthless weeds and wildflowers. As soon as you post, you can sink to the bottom, and the most money spent on the forum at present should be the post on the top of the forum for buying rice seeds. Manbao had already deleted the long paragraph about quarreling, and then took the time to reply to the man, it's not worthless, my wild grass and wildflowers are worth a lot of points. It was the same host who said, have you seen it? People who refute are so gentle. From the information she revealed, she is not only a girl, but also a big girl with a soft and gentle personality. When Manbao saw it, he was very happy, and happily said to Keek, see, he praised me for being gentle and gentle. She has heard too many compliments since she was a child, such as being smart, clever, diligent, filial, and strong-willed, not afraid of power, etc., but it has nothing to do with Ro. What her mother and sister-in-law told her the most was to be gentle, not to be too hard-tempered, and not to always quarrel with Bai Shan and Bai Chang. For the first time, Manbao was praised for being gentle, and he was as happy as drinking Bing Sisi's honey water in dog days. So I guess the girl didn't intend to target the second floor, but this is her usual way of doing things. You think she is hypocritical, but she thinks she is politely declining. When Man Bao saw it, he was unhappy and replied, "Don't talk nonsense, I didn't refuse, I just didn't." The analyst obviously didn't believe her words, and replied, "You have the system in hand. Judging from the things you put on the forum and the things you want to buy, your civilization is much lower than ours, so the tiger should be a lot." Man Bao thought about it. Although she had never seen it before, she had heard similar stories since she was a child. Someone went out to do business and was caught by a big worm that went down the mountain, so there should be quite a few tigers, so he replied said, "It's a lot. What else is impossible? What are you afraid of when you have a system in hand?" Man Bao said, "Your system can catch tigers. My system can't." Analyst, sister, although you are a girl, I still can't hold back. Are you a club? You are rich and powerful, can you not hire someone? Man Bao, I don't have money or power. The analyst had to speak again, and 0561, who had already deleted the building, suddenly added a sentence, "My system just told me something, saying that the host of 0531 was only 2 or 3 years old when he was recognized as the master." The analysts were silent, the hosts and many researchers were all silent, and they exploded after a while, "This is a scam, this is definitely a scam, what is the ID of the researcher who just traded with her? Hurry up and file a complaint. My God, you, a doctoral researcher, actually deceived a child, shameless." The original price of her branches was not very high, with a total of less than 20,000 points. Is this all a lie? I was terrified. I just checked it out. I found that most of the forum transactions of this child 0531 were with this person named DRD. Is this a long-term fraud? I've already complained, my little ones don't thank you. Man Bao and Keek were stunned together, and they were both stunned for 2 seconds before saying, "It's over." Man Bao wiped the non-existent cold sweat on his forehead, and immediately replied, "I used to be only 2 or 3 years old, but now I have grown up, DRD didn't lie to me, can't you look at the previous transactions? Transactions, the amount is normal, this time because we have our own agreement, this is free in the forum, why do you complain about my partner? After all, she is the host of the system, and most people can still listen to it, but a small number of people are obviously unwilling to listen to her explanation, thinking that she has been deceived, and they want to find justice for her." Man Bao was speechless for a moment, so he could only go to the email to find DRD. It's a pity that DRD has been offline. He may not have seen the information at this time, and he has not come up for a while. Man Bao said aggrievedly, "Will the encyclopedia check our chat records?" Keek said, "It will be complained." "Will the encyclopedia know that I have breached the contract?" Keek went through their chat records again, and said to the host, "Don't worry, you didn't take the initiative to reveal the news, you just didn't deny it. It's not a big problem." After a pause, it comforted her and said, "And they are using you now, so they won't break up with you over such trivial matters, as long as you don't take the initiative to reveal the meteorite's information." Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief, fortunately. Coco also felt thankful. Just as they were talking, the floors were getting higher and higher, and a sensible person said, "Everyone said that they have an agreement in private, why do you still have to file a complaint? Is it fun to ruin someone's interpersonal relationship?" Looking at their previous transaction records, the two of them are indeed very friendly, and their relationship has existed since 7 years ago, which means that they are regular customers, and it is normal to have a private agreement, fanning the flames. Some people are going too far. You also said that the host of 0531 is still a child. What is your motive for ruining the connections that the child has accumulated over 7 years? Speaking of the hosts of our worlds, because of the differences in what they include, there are very few disputes of interests. There should be no disputes of interests, but some people just don't look down on others. Even 0561 couldn't help but get angry. I don't like hypocrites like you the most, and they are blind without clearing things up. Tell yourself about yourself, don't you scold people without figuring it out. The second floor couldn't help shouting, did I scold her? 0531, you come out, I ask you, did I scold you? Man Bao said, you can call me Joe Man, 0531 is my system, forget it, you didn't scold me. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1850. The second floor saw her reluctance and said to her, I really want to raise a tiger. Although you are young, you have a system and it is not difficult to make money. If you have money, you can hire someone to catch tigers. He said, well, in the forum, the transaction fee for large points is very expensive, so I propose to exchange diamond mines with you before. Since you are young, I will exchange gold mines with you. Man Bao was stunned, gold mine. Yeah, I'm collecting ore. How about it? Do you want it? High quality gold ore, a tiger, a surviving cub, how about I give you a ton of gold ore? Man Bao, I still have use for gold, but what use do I use for gold mines? I can't build a furnace for smelting gold by myself. I don't have a place to store a ton of gold. It will take up my system space. All kinds of intelligent creatures on the forum saw this reply and determined that she was really young and rich. Are you still afraid of these? Do it. Keek looked at the replies and said to Man Bao, don't listen to them, they are not young, and they should have a certain position of power in their own world, so they can cover it up, or just show some anomalies. You can protect yourself, but you are different. It warned Man Baodao, although the collection task is important, it is still after your life safety, and these money are still in the back of your collection task, so it is not worth your risk. Man Bao nodded. In fact, she had a heartbeat just now, a ton of gold mine. But as soon as Keek said that, she calmed down. Let's not talk about the gold mine, just give her gold. Suddenly there is so much gold that she can't explain the source. As everyone grows older, she has consciously reduced from them all. Take something out. After all, they live together as a family, not alone. Her parents and husband may not know how much she has, but Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, who have been inseparable from her since childhood, could not be unaware. Especially Bai Shan, it is almost impossible to hide from her. It may not be very conspicuous that she stuffed a few gold ingots into her private room from time to time. After all, how much money she has, in fact, if she does not read the ledger, it is not very clear. But with so much money added, Bai Shan couldn't be unaware. Bai Shan thought that her father was following her, but her father gave her a book and could justify monitoring bad guys for her, but it was impossible to give her a ton of gold mine. But her father might find a gold mine for her. Thinking of this, Man Bao's eyes brightened and he asked Keek, 0561's host is mainly looking for gold mines, so doesn't he know how to find gold mines? Do you think I can ask him to help me find gold mines? Keek, across the world, 0561 can't scan the minerals here, and the host, even if you find a gold mine, can you mine it? Is this illegal? Man Bao thought it was true, she could only suppress the matter for the time being, read the post and replied, let's see the situation, I can't go far now, I can't find a tiger, if I can find a tiger in the future, in addition to recording, I'll keep one for you, but I don't want gold mines. After thinking about it, Man Bao said, what do I want to think about later? Seeing Zhou Manming's stubbornness on the second floor, he couldn't help blowing out his beard. If she wasn't a child, he would definitely hate her and teach her how to use the system. Why is she so stubborn? Man Bao was used to doing things in an orderly manner, so she wrote it down in the small book so that she would not forget it, and then left the small book in the system space. I remembered something about the forum, lest she forget. The husband said, no matter how good a person's memory is, there is no clear record of it. They discussed it freely here, but some people continued to debate in the forum, and the few people who were arguing just went out and started a separate post to quarrel. Man Bao felt a little unhappy when he saw it, so he logged out of the system. Seeing that the host was unhappy, Keek simply generated a data line with her emotional fluctuations, and sent it to the encyclopedia, and suggested the forum's privacy protection and the regulations for the protection of minors. Then it also followed the host. Man Bao had already opened the door to go out at this time, and after stretching for a while in the dark night, he sat on the railing under the porch in a daze. At this time, all the lights in the palace were locked and turned off, and in the dark night there was no other light except for the stars in the sky. Man Bao shook his legs under the starlight, pointed to the stars in the sky and asked, Keek, did you come from those stars? Keek's perspective also followed the host's line of sight to the sky, and after a moment said, farther. It paused, and went to the encyclopedia to find more than a dozen books to give to the host, saying, the origin of the universe, and the galaxies that have been discovered by intelligent creatures, you can take a look, and the origin and development of intelligent creatures, but you if so, just look at human beings. So she found more than 20 books and gave them to her, and asked, do you want to buy them? Man Bao looked at each book as thick as 3 palms, and she was speechless. Even if she likes reading books again, and is interested in Keek's origin and the future destiny of mankind, she can't say the word buy at this moment. She asked, can I show it to others? Yes, Keek said, this is easier than the book you brought out of space before, it's just a fantasy written by a literati, no one will believe it, and most of the theoretical things in the book, the proportion of historical things not much. The book that Joe Man wanted to bring out of the space before, the encyclopedia would make some deletions and revisions based on her current world civilization, and then use the excuse to be an unofficial history written by people. Anyway, the development of history is always similar, whether it is prosperous or declining, no one knows the book. Which dynasty is alluded to, everyone has different views. Now there are all kinds of scriptures on the market that allude to the late emperor's conquest of the world. The unofficial stories are half-truths and outrageous. Except for the background, there are some similarities, and the rest are all imaginary. Among them, the outstanding representative is Bai Erlang. He wrote the biography of Xiang Mingxiu. 5 points are true, and the other 5 points are all written by himself. Everyone watched it with relish and took it seriously at the end. But the literati knew these little secrets. In contrast, these dozens of books are written in a mysterious way, completely divorced from the existence of current civilization, and they do not have too many specific descriptions of future technology. Look. People who believe in this world will only think that the author made up when they see it. This era has a strong monopoly on books and knowledge. Some books and knowledge are not in circulation, and even people in the same family are not qualified to study, so Joe Man excused that these books were obtained from her, and it was easy to hide from others. It's just not good to hide Bai Shan. But Keek thinks there is no need to worry, because Bai Shan will find a good reason for the host himself. See you at 6 p.m.